Long before service stations glowed under motorway lights, Britain's roads were stitched together by transport cafes, steamed-up windows, formica tables, and a mug of tea strong enough to stand a spoon in. Lorry drivers lived by these roadside stops, fueling long night hauls on cheap, hearty plates cooked by hand. Today we count down 25 transport cafe meals that fed the men who kept Britain moving before the chains rolled in and switched off the fryers for good. Let's begin with number 25. Number 25, pickled eggs. They sat in a fat glass jar on the counter, pale globes suspended in cloudy vinegar, catching the light beside the till. A lorry driver stumbling in at 3 in the morning could point at the jar without a word, and the woman behind the counter would fish one out with a long spoon, drop it on a saucer, and take his tuppence. Pickled eggs were the transport cafe's ready snack. No cooking, no waiting, just sharp, rubbery protein to line a stomach before the next 100 miles. Some drivers crushed them into a buttered roll, others ate them whole, chased with strong tea. The vinegar bite cut through diesel fumes and cigarette smoke and kept a man awake at the wheel. When the motorway services arrived, their cellophane-wrapped snacks and vending machines had no room for a jar of eggs on a saucer. The ritual and the jar quietly disappeared. Number 24. Doorstep bread and dripping. Before a proper plate was ordered, many a driver made do with bread and dripping. Thick slabs of white bloomer, cut by hand as wide as a fist, spread with the pale amber fat saved from the cafe's endless roasting tins. A shake of salt, a crack of pepper, and it cost next to nothing, often thrown in free with a mug of tea. The dripping carried the ghost of 100 Sunday joints, savory and rich, soaking into the soft crumb. For a man who had driven since dawn on a wage that never quite stretched, bread and dripping was warmth and ballast, a way to fill the corners without emptying the wage packet. Cafes kept the dripping in enamel bowls by the stove, topping them up week after week. When the chains came, with their portion-controlled butter pats and sealed sachets, the free doorstep and its jar of dripping had no place at the plastic tray. Number 23. Beans on toast. 2 slices of white, blackened at the edges under the grill, buttered thick, then buried under a ladle of baked beans bubbling straight from the pan. Beans on toast was the quickest hot plate a transport cafe could turn out. For a shilling or so, a driver got something warm, sweet, and filling in under 5 minutes, exactly what a tight schedule demanded. Cooks kept a great catering tin of beans warming all day, spooning it over toast, chips, or a fry-up as the orders came. It was food that asked nothing of the diner but a knife and fork, and it never disappointed a cold, tired man off the night run. Children in the family cafes loved it too, dipping crusts into the sauce. The dish survived the motorway age better than most, but the version served on a formica table, beans straight from a battered pan, tasted of a roadside Britain the service stations could never quite copy. Number 22. Fried bread. Nothing spoke of the transport cafe griddle quite like fried bread, a slice of yesterday's loaf dropped into the pan where the bacon and sausages had just been, soaking up all that flavored fat until it turned gold and crisp at the edges and soft in the middle. It cost pennies, used up bread that would otherwise go stale, and gave a hungry driver the richest, most satisfying mouthful on the plate. Some men swore the fried slice was the best part of the whole breakfast, better even than the bacon. The cook would press it down with a spatula, let it drink the dripping, and flip it once until both sides shone. It was pure indulgence, born of thrift. When motorway cafeterias switched to cleaner, faster cooking on flat industrial hot plates, the puddle of bacon fat vanished, and with it, the humble fried slice that had once crowned a proper roadside breakfast. Number 21. The chip butty. Golden chips, thick cut and glistening, piled between 2 slices of buttered white bread, and pressed down until the butter melted, and the loaf soaked up the grease. The chip butty was the lorry driver's handheld feast. It cost less than a proper dinner, but filled a man just as well, and he could eat it one-handed, half out the cab window if the schedule was cruel. A splash of vinegar, a shake of salt, a smear of red sauce, and it was perfect. Northern cafes served it without apology. It was carbohydrate on carbohydrate, unashamed and glorious, the food of men who burned every calorie hauling freight across the country. Cafes cut their own chips from sacks of potatoes each morning, frying them in beef dripping for that unmistakable savor. The motorway chains offered chips too, but skinny, frozen, and fried in bland oil. Never the doorstep butty that had powered a generation down the A-roads. Number 20. Spam fritters. A slice of spam, dipped in batter and dropped into hot fat until it puffed and crisped into a golden cushion, was a transport cafe favorite that stretched a cheap tin into a proper meal. Spam had arrived with the Americans during the war and never left. By the 1950s, it was a cupboard staple, and cooks learned to batter and fry it, so the salty pink meat inside turned hot and yielding beneath a crackling shell. Served with chips and a splash of vinegar, spam fritters cost little and satisfied much, the ideal fuel for a driver watching his wages. The batter was the same, used for fish, whipped up in a great bowl and kept ready by the fryer. Children pinched them from their fathers' plates. As frozen ready meals and burger chains crept into the service stations, the battered slice of tinned meat came to seem old-fashioned, and the spam fritter slipped quietly off the roadside menu. Number 19. Cheese and onion cob. Not every stop meant a hot plate. Sometimes a driver wanted something to carry, and the cheese and onion cob answered, a crusty round roll split and filled with a doorstep wedge of crumbly cheddar and thick rings of raw onion wrapped in grease-proof paper to eat down the road. The onion was fierce enough to bring tears and keep a man awake. The cheese was sharp and filling. It cost a few pence and needed no cooking, so it was there at any hour, stacked on a plate under a glass dome by the till. Depending on the region, it was a cob, a bap, a balm, or a stotty, but the filling stayed the same. Drivers bought two, one for now, one for the lay-by at midnight. When the chain sold triangular sandwiches in plastic boxes, uniform and chilled, the hand-cut cob with its eye-watering onion became a memory of a friendlier road. Number 18. Kippers. For the driver who wanted something beyond the fry-up, a pair of Kippers spoke of a cafe that took pride in its griddle. Split, smoked herring, grilled in butter until the skin blistered and the flesh turned deep amber, Kippers filled the whole room with their oaky, oily smoke. Served with brown bread and butter and a wedge of lemon. If the cafe was feeling grand, they were cheap, nourishing, and packed with the kind of substance a man needed for a long haul. The bones demanded patience, picked out one by one, but the reward was rich and savory. Fishing ports supplied the cafes along the eastern routes, and a plate of kippers cost little more than a shilling. As tastes shifted, and the smell of smoked fish gave way to the sizzle of frozen burgers under motorway lights, the humble kipper vanished from roadside plates, surviving only in seaside guest houses and the memories of older drivers. Number 17. Black pudding. A thick disc of black pudding, fried until the edges caught and crisped, was the transport cafe's darkest and most divisive offering. Made from pig's blood, oatmeal, and fat, studded with pale nuggets of suet, it carried a deep, iron-rich savor that split drivers into believers and refusers. In the northern cafes especially, no proper fry-up was complete without it, laid beside the bacon and egg like a badge of the region. It cost coppers, filled the belly, and gave a man the ballast to face a freezing dawn on the A6. Butchers along the routes supplied it fresh, each guarding a recipe passed down for generations. The cook sliced it thick and let it sizzle until it almost blackened. When the motorway chains standardized their breakfasts for a national palate, black pudding, too regional and too strange for head office, quietly disappeared from the tray, surviving now as a delicacy rather than a driver's daily staple. Number 16. Corned beef hash. When the cafe needed to feed a room full of hungry men from almost nothing, out came the corned beef hash, a tin of salty pink beef from Argentina, diced and fried with onions and leftover boiled potatoes until the bottom crusted brown and crisp. It was thrift made delicious, a way to stretch one cheap tin across several plates, topped sometimes with a fried egg wobbling on top. The metallic tang of corned beef was unmistakable, and the crisp, savory edges were what drivers fought for. It cost little, cooked fast, and sat heavy enough to last a man 300 miles. Cooks kept tins stacked in the pantry, insurance against a busy night. Served with a splash of brown sauce, it was pure roadside comfort. As fresh, frozen convenience took over the service station kitchens, the humble tin of corned beef lost its place, and the hash that had fed the night shift faded from the menu. Number 15. Bubble and squeak. Nothing was wasted in a transport cafe, and Bubble and Squeak proved it. Cold potato and cabbage left from the day before, mashed together and fried in a hot pan until the edges crisped and the whole thing hissed and squeaked, giving the dish its name. It came alongside a fry-up or stood alone with a fried egg, cheap and filling and faintly sweet from the browned cabbage. For a few pence, a driver got a hot plate built entirely from yesterday's leftovers, the kind of honest food that spoke of a kitchen that threw nothing away. Cooks pressed it flat, let it catch and color, then flipped it in one satisfying turn. The brown, crisp bits were the prize. When the motorway cafeterias arrived with their portioned, pre-prepped meals and their strict hygiene routines, there was no room for a pan of yesterday's veg, and Bubble and Squeak slipped away with the independent calf. Number 14. Faggots and peas. In the cafes of the Midlands and the Black Country, faggots and peas were the sit-down supper drivers pulled off the road for. Faggots, parcels of minced pig's liver, heart, and belly, bound with breadcrumbs and sage and baked in rich onion gravy, delivered a deep, offal savor that stuck to the ribs on the coldest night. Served with a mound of mushy peas and a slick of thick gravy soaking into everything, it was a proper hot dinner for the price of a few coppers. Butchers made the faggots fresh, each with a secret blend of seasoning, and the cafes reheated them in trays that filled the room with a herbal, meaty steam. A driver would clean the plate with bread and sit back satisfied. As the M5 and M6 pulled traffic off the old roads and the service stations served bland national fare, the regional faggot lost its roadside home and became a rarity. Number 13. Oxtail soup. On a bitter night, few things revived a frozen driver like a bowl of oxtail soup, deep brown, glossy with natural gelatine, thick enough to coat the spoon. Cafes simmered the bony tails for hours with onions and carrots until the meat fell away, and the liquor turned rich and restorative, or kept a great catering tin warming on the stove for the rush. Either way, a bowl cost pennies and warmed a man from the inside out, served with a doorstep of bread to mop the bottom. It was the first thing many drivers ordered before the main plate, a way to thaw out after hours in an unheated cab. The savor was beefy, warming, and faintly peppery. As motorway cafeterias moved to lighter, faster fare and self-service counters, the slow, simmered pot of Oxtail and the tin that stood in for it disappeared from the roadside, replaced by thin, forgettable broths. Number 12. Liver and onions. Liver and onions was the cafe dinner that divided the room as sharply as it filled the belly. Slices of lamb's or pig's liver, fried fast in a hot pan and smothered in soft, sweet, caramelized onions, came with mash and a pool of thick gravy for the price of a few coins. Cheap and rich in iron, it was exactly the hearty, restorative food a working driver needed, though the strong, metallic savor sent some men fleeing to the egg and chips. Speed was everything. A minute too long and the liver turned tough and grey, so a good café cook watched the pan like a hawk. Butchers supplied it fresh along every route, and it cost a fraction of any steak. The smell of onions frying pulled drivers in off the road. As frozen convenience took over the service stations and offal fell out of fashion, liver and onions slid from the menu into memory. Number 11. Toad in the hole. Golden Yorkshire batter, risen and crisp, cradling fat sausages browned in their own fat. Toad in the hole was the cafe dinner that turned a handful of bangers into a feast for a hungry man. The batter, poured around the sausages in a hot tin and baked until it billowed at the edges, went soft and rich in the middle where it soaked up the meat juices. Drowned in thick onion gravy and served with mash or peas, it cost little and filled every corner. Cafes along the trunk roads made great trays of it, cutting thick squares to order through the lunchtime rush. The crisp corners were the prize, fought over just as they were at any family table. It was thrift dressed up as celebration. When the motorway chains swapped slow oven bakes for fast-fried convenience and reheated portions, the billowing tray of toad in the hole had no place, and it faded from the roadside. Number 10. Bangers and mash. Few plates said comfort like bangers and mash, plump sausages, browned and glistening, laid over a mountain of buttery mashed potato and flooded with onion gravy. It was the Transport Cafe's reliable standby, cheap enough for the tightest wage and filling enough to see a driver through a night haul across the Pennines. Cafes bought sausages by the box from local butchers, each with its own blend of pork and rusk, and mashed potatoes fresh in great pans through the day. The gravy came thick and dark, ladled generously. A driver could eat it fast, pay his shilling, and be back on the road within the hour. It asked nothing and gave everything, the definition of honest roadside food. When the service stations arrived with their trays and their reconstituted mash and gravy from a packet, the fresh mashed butcher sausage version lost its soul, and the real thing retreated to the vanishing independent cafes. Number 9. Cottage pie. Cottage pie was the Transport Cafe's answer to a proper Sunday dinner served any day of the week. Minced beef simmered with onions and gravy beneath a golden crust of mashed potato, browned and forked into ridges under the grill. It came in thick, steaming squares cut from a great tray, filling and warming and cheap, exactly what a driver wanted after a long, cold stretch behind the wheel. Cooks made it in the morning and kept it hot through the day, the smell of beef and browned potato drawing men in off the road. Served with a scoop of peas or a splash more gravy, it cost a shilling or two and left no one hungry. The crisp potato top was the best part, forked up first. As motorway cafeterias filled their counters with frozen, foil-trayed versions, uniform and bland, the fresh-made cafe cottage pie became a casualty of convenience. Number 8. Gammon, egg and chips. When a driver had a few pence more to spend, gammon, egg and chips was the cafe's little luxury. A thick, salty slab of gammon steak, fried until the fat caught and crisped at the edges, crowned with a fried egg or a ring of tinned pineapple, and piled high with hand-cut chips. It was the meal a man ordered on payday, or to celebrate the end of a long run, more substantial and more special than the everyday egg and chips. The salt of the gammon, the runny yolk, the vinegar-splashed chips. It was roadside indulgence at its finest. Cafes kept the gammon in the cold store and slapped it on the griddle to order, the whole room filling with its savory smoke. It cost more than most plates, but still less than any restaurant. As the chains offered their pale, portion-controlled versions, the generous Café Gammon slipped into nostalgia. Number 7. Mixed Grill. The mixed grill was the Transport Café's crown jewel of the savory menu, the plate a driver ordered when hunger had turned fierce and the wage packet allowed. A sizzling landslide of sausage, bacon, a lamb chop or a piece of steak, kidney, liver, black pudding, a fried egg, a grilled tomato, and a mound of chips, all crowded onto one great platter. It was more food than most men could finish, the ultimate reward after a brutal shift, and it left a driver fueled for the rest of the day. Cafes built their reputations on it. Word traveled among drivers about which calf piled the plate highest. The griddle groaned under the weight of it all, filling the room with smoke and savor. It cost a fair bit, but delivered value no service station could match. When the chains streamlined their menus for speed and cost, the towering mixed grill was among the first casualties. Number 6. Steak and kidney pudding. Of all the hot dinners a Transport Café served, steak and kidney pudding was the heaviest and most beloved. Chunks of beef and kidney sealed inside a suet pastry crust, steamed for hours until the pastry turned glossy and the filling ran with dark, savory gravy. It was the food of cold nights and long hauls, a dense, warming plate that sat in the belly like ballast and kept a man going for miles. Cafes steamed the puddings in great basins through the morning, turning them out to order so the crust split and the gravy flooded the plate. Served with mash and peas, it cost a couple of shillings and satisfied like nothing else. The smell of steaming suet and beef was the smell of a proper calf. As Motorway kitchens swapped slow steaming for fast-heated pies in foil, the true suet pudding, laborious and rich, disappeared from the roadside. Number 5. Rice pudding. After the savory plates came the puddings, and none was more soothing than rice pudding. Short-grain rice baked slow with milk and sugar until it turned thick and golden, a wrinkled brown skin forming across the top. For a driver with a sweet tooth and a long night ahead, a bowl of warm rice pudding was pure comfort, the skin peeled back to reveal the creamy softness beneath. Cafes baked it in great enamel dishes and served it by the ladleful, cheap and filling and gently sweet, sometimes with a spoonful of jam stirred through. It cost pennies and rounded off a meal like a warm blanket. Some men fought over the caramelized skin, others scraped it aside for the smooth heart. As the service stations turned to individual plastic pots and factory-set desserts, the slow-baked bowl of rice pudding, with its prized skin, quietly left the roadside menu. Number 4. Spotted dick and custard. When a cafe wanted to send a driver back to the road, properly fortified, out came spotted dick and custard, a dense suet sponge studded with currants and sultanas, steamed for hours and served in thick slices under a river of hot yellow custard. Alongside its cousin, jam roly-poly, it was the pudding that filled the last empty corner and lifted the spirits before a cold night's driving. Cafes steamed the puddings in cloth or basin through the day, the sweet, nutty scent drifting through the room, and ladled custard from a great jug that never seemed to empty. It cost coppers and delivered warmth, sweetness, and pure nostalgia in a single bowl. The custard soaked into the sponge, and every spoonful was comfort. As the Motorway chain swapped steamed puddings for cold, cellophane-wrapped cakes and machine-poured sauces, the real spotted dick vanished from the road. Number 3. Egg and chips. No plate defined the Transport Café more completely than egg and chips. 2 eggs fried in bubbling fat with lacy, crisp edges and soft, runny yolks, tipped over a heap of hand-cut chips fried golden in beef dripping. It was the driver's default, the cheapest proper hot meal on the board, ordered 100 times a night across 1,000 roadside cafes. A splash of vinegar, a shake of salt, a smear of red or brown sauce, and a man had everything he needed for a few pence. Cafes cut their chips fresh each morning from sacks of spuds and cracked eggs to order, the pan never cooling from dawn to dawn. The yolk broke and ran into the chips, and that was the whole simple glory of it. When the chains served frozen chips and mean little portions under bright lights, the real egg and chips, cooked by hand at any hour, became a lost roadside ritual. Number 2, the bacon butty. If one thing pulled a lorry off the road at first light, it was the promise of a bacon butty, rashers of back bacon fried until the fat crisped and the edges caught, layered between 2 thick slices of soft white bread and butter, with a squeeze of red or brown sauce running down the wrist. It was fast, cheap, and perfect. The handheld breakfast a driver could eat in the cab as the engine warmed. The smell of frying bacon drifting from a cafe door was a summons no hungry man could resist. Cooks kept the griddle loaded through the small hours, slapping rashers onto buttered doorsteps as fast as the orders came. The bread soaked up the fat, the bacon gave the salt, the sauce gave the bite. Nothing more was needed. The service station sold bacon rolls too, but chilled and reheated, never the sizzling doorstep butty that had greeted 1,000,000 dawns on the open road. Number 1, the all-day fry-up and a mug of tea. And at the very top, the meal that was the beating heart of every transport cafe, the full English fry-up, washed down with a mug of tea strong enough to stand a spoon in. Bacon, sausage, fried egg, beans, fried bread, tomato, black pudding, and a mountain of toast, all crowded onto one steaming plate for a couple of shillings, served at any hour of the day or night. Beside it stood the mug, thick, chipped, and enormous. The tea stewed dark and sweet in a great urn that never went cold. This was the meal that fueled the men who kept Britain moving, the reward at the end of a night haul and the fuel at the start of a new one. The fry-up was ceremony, comfort, and survival on a single plate. Cafes lived or died on the quality of theirs, and drivers passed word of the best from cab to cab across the country. When the motorway chains arrived, Watford Gap, the Blue Boar, Fortes, and Granada, with their plastic trays, self-service queues, and reheated portions under fluorescent light, something was lost that no service station ever recovered. The hand-cooked plate, the bottomless urn, and the warmth of a place that knew the road. That's the countdown, 25 plates that fed the knights of the road before the fryers went cold. Everyone was cheap, hand-cooked, and served with a care no vending machine could match. The transport cafe was more than a meal stop. It was a warm window in the dark, a place where a tired driver was known. Which of these did your dad or granddad swear by? Tell me in the comments, and if this brought back the smell of a proper caf, don't forget to subscribe.